Show your support year-round for the conservation of Vermont's natural heritage with a brand new conservation license plate for your car or truck. Choose from the common loon, brook trout, or white-tailed deer. Proceeds from conservation license plates support efforts to protect endangered wildlife and keep Vermont's watersheds healthy. So look for the loon, trout, and deer on roadways near you this fall. This message brought to you by the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department and the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Deer hunting has always been and remains a cherished tradition in Vermont. With more than 80,000 Vermonters taking to the woods each fall, the question of "got your deer yet?" gets asked of hunters numerous times throughout the season.
Nice deer. Thank you. Welcome. Appreciate it.
This past Saturday was the opening day of the November rifle season, and check-in stations across the state were busy. Join us as we give viewers a chance to share their stories from the field and answer that age-old question, "Got your deer yet?" on tonight's Outdoor Journal special.
Welcome to an Outdoor Journal special here on Vermont PBS. Our topic and question for the night is, got your deer yet? I'm Matt Crawford, your host for the next hour, and joining me to take your calls and emails about Vermont deer hunting in 2014 are Lewis Porter, Commissioner of the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, Adam Markowski, who is the lead deer biologist for the state of Vermont's Fish and Wildlife Department, and Tovar Cerulli from Central Vermont, an author who wrote a book about his transformation from vegan to venison lover. We welcome your calls, and if you have questions or comments for our panelists, email us at oj@vermontpbs.org. We'd love to see your photos, hear your stories about their season. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Tovar, let's start with you. Unlike a lot of our viewers, perhaps, who've gone to deer camp with their grandfathers and their fathers and are passing it down, you came into hunting rather late, didn't you?
I did. I started hunting about 10 years ago.
And talk about your book, which sort of chronicles that experience as you got into hunting.
Yeah, you know, I grew up fishing, but by the time I was 20, I was a vegetarian and actually a strict vegan for about 10 years. And when my diet changed in my early 30s, I went back to fishing, and I started to think about hunting as a way to both confront, you know, the fact that I was eating meat again, and also a way to get to know the landscape in a different way and get some local food. So yeah, I started about 10 years ago.
Lewis, not many folks come into hunting as adults, but you're trying to build that momentum, and you have some programs in place to do that?
Yeah, we realize that it's an important component of deer hunting in Vermont and deer hunters in Vermont, and that's a group of people we need to reach out to. Of course, we've always, or for a long time, had hunter education courses to encourage and help people learn how to hunt and how to hunt safely. But it's become clear to us that an increasing number of people might won't be interested in getting engaged in hunting and fishing, even if their family hasn't done it traditionally or they didn't grow up doing it. And that in some cases, those folks need a little bit of extra help if they haven't grown up in that tradition.
Some other programs in place we were talking about off air that...
Yeah, there are several states, you know, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Wyoming, and some others that have really gone pretty far in getting families and adults involved. I call us adult onset hunters. But we have, you know, quite a few programs around the country that are really filling the role that families would normally fill to really mentor people, not just in safety, but just where do you find a place to hunt and how do you hunt and all that.
Adam, particularly in deer hunting, hunters are sort of the apex predator here on the scene, right? What role do hunters play in Vermont for deer control or deer management?
Right, so I think that's a great question, and hunters play a critical role in maintaining an appropriate number of deer on the landscape, and our management strategies are meant to keep Vermont's deer healthy, and some side effects of that are that we really mitigate some of the negative implications of there being too many deer, whether that be agricultural damage, deer vehicle collisions, or just some negative interactions that people have when there are too many deer. So hunters play an integral role in helping maintain an appropriate number of deer across the landscape, and that's beneficial to Vermont deer hunters, the deer themselves, and especially the habitats that support them.
Well, the OJ crew was out on the opening day of rifle season, And we've got some tape from a very busy station up in Swanton there where hunters were actually doing their part and taking some of those deer off the landscape.
Well, I got up, I said goodbye to my boys. They're hunting in Isle Mont this morning. I came down to my dad's in Highgate Springs and set up behind his house and was watching the woods and saw a few deer show up. And this was with 3 other deer. They were doe, and this was chasing them around. And it finally presented an opportunity for me, and I was lucky enough to get them.
Missed an 8-pointer my first year I ever shot at. Next year missed a doe. Yeah, this year I missed a doe during youth weekend, and then first day opening morning got this. I hear pat 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 going through the marsh, and like this all can't be squirrels and stuff. Look over to my left, and there's this guy looking at me. And yeah, I didn't count the horn before I shot, but I knew it was. I saw main beams and I saw the fork, and I was like, okay, it's a shooter buck. It's a 6-pointer, and it was 149 pounds. Yeah, this is my first deer.
Congratulations, man. Thank you very, very much.
Congratulations.
A nice animal.
Well done.
Well done.
Classified as a 10-point. It's 159 pounds. This is the biggest deer I ever shot. The last deer I shot was in 2011. He was a 6-pointer. He's only the 5th deer I've ever shot. And I've been hunting since I was 8. My dad's been hunting, I can't even tell you how long. He's the one that got us into it. So he's a big advocate into it. He's shot plenty of deer, and this is the first one I ever shot with him not being there. So it was an experience.
It's a getaway. We own a business, the Bay Store in St. Albans. This store here previously was our family's until last December for 24 years. So we kind of grew up around the deer and stuff. And for us, it's getting out in the woods and seeing the nature, and it's peace and quiet. It's a break from work and reality and stuff. And it's nice to be able to do with your wife. You know, we got a 5-year-old who's ecstatic and he can't wait. So another 3 years, it's going to be about him. So
I've been hunting since I was probably 12 years old down in Pennsylvania. I was born south of Pittsburgh, and I've hunted all my life. I come from a hunting family, and I don't know, maybe this is, maybe the 20th or so. So I've been very fortunate.
It's a tradition we do every year. Even now that I'm 3,000 miles away, I come back, every other year pretty much to hunt with him, and he always offers me a stand, and I don't take it, and this is what happens. He gets them. So.
Adam, we saw, looked like a pretty busy way station there. Just anecdotally, I know you probably don't have a whole lot of numbers now. How was the opening day of rifle deer season?
Right, so numbers are still coming in for the archery youth and particularly the rifle season, and we still have the late muzzleloader season that will occur this fall. So anecdotally, those seasons seem to be on par, and we'll have to watch how they turn out. But it seems that most people did well. Reports from hunters are that they had a good opening weekend, and we'll continue to monitor those that as the season progresses, and some stations are down versus previous years, some are up. So we really need to get a total picture of all the deer harvest before we start trying to assess where things are at.
Sure, makes sense. All week long we've asked viewers to send in their stories, and you can still do it. You can still send in your stories and your photos to oj@vermontpbs.org. But I want to just go through a couple of quick emails here and show you some deer that came in from some of the viewers of Vermont PBS. So this was sent in by Ryan Abel, and the email says, please find a picture of 9-year-old Carter Abel's first deer he shot on the opening morning of Youth Weekend. This is a 95-pound 5-pointer shot in South Hero. And then we have another one by Robin Tyndale from Waitsfield. He says that Busy, age 7, and Willie, age 5, can't wait to hunt with her dad, Colin, who got this buck at 7 a.m. on opening morning. And we have another one, Ben Mazur. He says, Ben says, I shot this 158-pound 8-pointer on Saturday morning at 7:25 in Rockingham. I'm 19 years old, and this is my 9th deer. I love deer hunting and just being out in the woods. He came down off the bank behind me, head high, searching for a doe. I shot him with my grandfather's 7mm .8 and hope this makes the show on Thursday night. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for sending that in. And we've got some callers as well. And we're going to go to a caller now. We're going to talk to Tim in Essex. So, Tim, I hope you're there. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
What I got on my notes is that you love youth season, and this was no exception this year.
This year was an awesome year for all of us up at camp with our youth that we had. I don't know if you're showing the picture on the TV or not, but we had 4 youths up at camp this year, and we had 4 youths collect a deer. So it was a pretty memorable year.
Where's the camp, Tim?
We're up in Franklin.
Nice. And a lot of deer in Franklin County.
Yeah, WMUB has some of the highest densities in the state.
And the 4 kids who got them all on the same day or spread out throughout the weekend? How'd that go down?
It was pretty much spread out throughout the weekend. We had 2 tagged, 2 of them Saturday morning, and one, actually, the last 2 tagged them the following Sunday morning. And usually it works out well for them because they end up not having to work quite as hard as everybody else does. It just produces pretty well by 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning.
Did they leave any deer for you for this rifle season?
As a matter of fact, 2 of the dads went back up to camp the following weekend and tagged another 5-pointer and a 6-pointer.
And 2 of those dads, Tim, would one of them be you or no?
That would be, I got the 5-pointer, yeah.
Great, so he can answer the question, got you deer yet. Tim, thanks very much for that great story, and thanks for calling in.
You're very welcome, thank you.
Tovar, we've seen a lot of photos. We just saw some there. We've seen some video. Proud hunters standing with their dead deer. I know last year you wrote a column for High Country News talking about sort of that uneasiness that can come, or that you had with that grip and grin photo or the trophy photos. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. You know, as a non-hunter and basically an anti-hunter for many years and a vegetarian, the idea of someone smiling and they've got this dead animal is kind of strange if you're not part of that culture. And you know, the emotion, what's that happiness? You know, happiness about killing seems kind of strange for a lot of people. Now that I've gotten into hunting and I've got to know more hunters, I understand that there's a lot of complex emotions going on for a lot of hunters when they take a deer. They can be proud and excited, but also feel some sadness or even remorse, and there's all kinds of things going on for people. And even hunters generally do have a sense that there's meaning in how you feel about killing. If someone does a touchdown dance over a deer, there's something wrong with that. Even as hunters, we realize maybe that's a little bit extreme and you shouldn't quite feel that way or express it that way. So yeah, those images are complicated, I think, for people, especially on the outside of that experience who've never been there.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, just picking up on what Tovar was saying, is that we do periodically and recently done surveys of hunters and what's important to them about hunting, what they like about Vermont deer hunting, what they don't like. And one of the things that's consistently true is that getting a deer is important to hunters, but it's not among the most important aspects of hunting for them. Hunting with family, spending time in the woods, seeing buck sign, and just being out there are the most important things. And while I appreciate and enjoy seeing the photos of people with their deer, and as commissioner you're lucky enough to get to see a lot of those, I think that photo and that second in time, while great, is only a part of what people are interested in hunting, and they're pretty clear in that when we talk to them about what they care about.
And a lot of those other moments don't really transfer to photos.
Right,
you know, the memory, all the images are in your head on those.
Exactly. And I mean, that's sort of the moment of the connection to the animal, but the connection to the landscape and to your friends and family and other hunters is not, not quite as concise. It's not quite as clear and captured by a camera.
We have been getting some emails, and I got an email here from Roger. And so Roger asks, he says, I've not gotten my deer yet, so I have no story to tell. But I'd like to know how many of your panelists have shot a buck this year, and how many have ever bagged a buck in Vermont. Want to start with you, Lewis? I know you went out on opening day, didn't you?
Well, I did. I've been out, I think, every day since as well. But like Roger, I don't have a story or a deer yet.
Tovar, I guess I'll ask you the question. Got your deer yet?
Yeah, 9 o'clock this morning, as a matter of fact.
This morning?
This morning. I'm tired. If I get slap happy, that's why. I was out on opening morning, and I saw, a doe and a spikehorn. And
actually, I saw that you were lamenting, you were calling yourself your Native American name you thought might be Dances with Spikehorns.
Right. Well, I hunted a little bit in Massachusetts during bow season and had some close encounters with a spikehorn. But yeah, I've seen some good deer sign, and I've seen deer, including legal buck. But this morning it finally connected.
Any details on that, or?
Well, I was sitting in this ridge over this little valley, and I'd seen a doe go by. I thought it was a doe, hard to tell. 75 yards out in thick woods, and a while later, maybe 45 minutes later, just suddenly I realized that in the valley, how did he get there? There's a buck coming up, and he disappeared into a big blowdown, and I thought maybe he was going to go down the valley, but he came right up into the draw where I was, and about 35 yards away, really direct, clear shot, and he went down. So
nice. And I know, Adam, you've got a little surprise. We got a little surprise for you, I think. So when I ask you, got your deer yet? We're going to show something here to show people getting your deer.
Yeah. Hi. Just got my first Vermont deer. There's a buck, a nice buck, like one of the nicest bucks I've ever shot. And I'm from Wisconsin, folks. I'm so jacked right now. I'm hunting so hard. I am one happy camper on VT.
So let's hear some of the details. When, who are you with? How big was he?
Yeah, so I was hunting West Haven, which is in WMUK, and I was hunting where there's actually a break in the ledge, so it's essentially a very good funnel leading up to some oak flats. And I had seen some deer earlier in the morning, and I happened to harvest this deer around 4. So the day was almost over, and he literally caught me with my head back against a tree. It's almost spotted me 3 times while he was coming up, and I had a terrific shot well within bow range, and I was able to put a good shot on the animal. And so what you see is me after I trailed it a couple minutes later. So
point of view camera, or is that your phone camera?
Oh, that's my phone. Yeah, so
so you're not
self video. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey, listen, we've got a caller on the line, and she's 9 years old. And Jenna from West Rutland I guess she got a deer during youth weekend, so I want to see if Jenna is there. Jenna, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, so give us the deal. Was it youth weekend or was it rifle season?
It was youth weekend.
And who are you hunting with on youth weekend?
I was hunting with my daddy.
And had you ever been hunting with him before?
Yes, last year.
Did you go hunting with last year, or did you go hunting with him?
I went hunting with him last year.
So was it Saturday or Sunday of youth weekend?
Saturday.
Morning or afternoon?
It was around kind of the afternoon.
Did you go? Did you hunt it? Did you hunt that morning?
I hunted all day.
Did you go back to camp or home and take a nap, or were you in the woods the whole day?
When we went into bed, we went at 4 o'clock in the morning. We went up until it got light out, and then we stayed up until 10, and then we went back at like 1.
Nice. And so what did you shoot, Jenna, a buck or a doe?
I shot a buck.
What did he have for antlers?
It was a 9-pointer. It would have been a 10-pointer, but it lost a brow tie.
Oh, she's talking about brow tines. Look at Jenna talking about brow tines. And have you had some of the meat yet, Jenna?
What did you say?
Did you have some of the meat yet? Have you eaten any of that deer?
Yes, I'm eating it tonight, and I ate it yesterday night.
Wow. And how much did he weigh? It's a Vermont question. How much did he weigh?
He weighed 160.
169 pointer. Well, Jenna, thanks very much for calling. We really like that story, and good luck next year, too. And if you're going out during rifle season, good luck on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Warm your heart?
Yeah, that's great. That's just terrific. Great story and great success. So.
Adam, youth season has been really popular since it started. What opportunities does that give? Have we done any studies to show that that leads to more hunting when kids like Jenna shoot a deer, they want to hunt more? Are we seeing any of that sort of retention in hunters?
Absolutely. So we believe that our youth season is critical to recruiting new people into the sport. And you know, we talk about how people traditionally are introduced into hunting, and that's generally has been a family affair. And we know from some of our surveys and our work that about half of Vermont hunters don't have a family member that hunts. And that means that you know, those avenues for teaching new people the woodsmanship that you need to not only go out and find a deer, but handle it properly after you harvest it is perhaps not there for someone that's interested in learning to hunt. So by providing a mentoring opportunity where these young aspiring people can go out and spend time with a veteran hunter and not only learn the wood skills of the deer biology and how they use the land, but also the opportunity to go through the process of what you do after you harvest a deer. And so we know that about 40% of Vermont hunters have either gone on the youth hunt as a mentor or the mentoree.
That high, wow.
And about 90% of Vermonters are strong supporters of the youth hunt, even if they feel that it decreases their chances of harvesting a deer. And that's absolutely great to hear that Vermont hunters support that. And I think, you know, to kind of touch on some of the points Tover talked about earlier, you know, as a hunter myself, you know, I remember standing over the first deer I harvested and having watched my dad go to camp and my uncles all participate in hunt. That was a very exciting moment to finally harvest that deer, but it came with mixed emotions. You realize that life is precious and fragile, and at the same time you understand you're doing something that's good for the land, something that's good for your family. You're providing you know, some food for them. And I think it's the values and ethics that you get from those types of experiences that make people better. So to have a weekend set aside where we can really instill that in the next generation, I think it's critical to fostering the hunting tradition in Vermont.
You could certainly hear the excitement in Jenna's voice when we talked to her.
Yeah, that's great.
We've got some emails, and I got to get to them, but one before we go. It says, I remember about 34 years ago, so I must have been, said, Matt's brother PJ shot the deer. Matt had been watching for weeks before the season opened. He was not a very happy camper. But we got some other...
So that revealing things about people who write in goes both ways, apparently.
Yes, absolutely. Let's look at a couple of the emails we have here. This is one's from Stephen Morrow. And Stephen wrote in, he said he took this 5-point, 139-pound buck about 7 a.m. on rifle season in Fairfax. There it is right there. The rut is on, he said, and he was out cruising. Adam, the rut is on. Is that the opening weekend of deer season? Was that the rut?
We know that most breeding occurs in the 3rd to 4th week of November. And one thing that hunters often confuse is actual breeding activity and pre-rut activity. So when breeding occurs, we know about a week ahead of time is when we really see the chasing and the rubs and the scrape making. Those things generally really pick up about a week before the actual breeding occurs, and those things are definitely happening right now.
Person you know sent an email in, Mary Diego. So Mary says, this is a picture of my 6-pointer shot on opening morning. I'm only a second-year hunter, and this is the first deer that I've ever harvested. It was shot in orange and weighed 129 pounds. Look at the snow there. That's pretty cool. And then we have another one from Chris Eddy. Here's a photo of my youngest son's 2014 youth season buck. Opening morning around 9:20 a.m. I grunted this beauty in for a 60-yard shot. Back to your point about the deer being active. My son's name is Lane Eddy, and he's 11 years old. We live in Brandon. The buck is an 8-pointer, 201 pounds. That's his first deer. We've got some callers too. So Pete in Jericho is joining us. Pete, are you there?
Sure am. What a great show. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for calling. How are things with you?
Oh, things are great. We had just a wonderful opening of the deer season down in southern Vermont, and it was amazing to see how much snow was on the backside of Stratton Mountain. And we saw some pretty nice tracks. Not a lot of deer that we saw, but just an amazing weekend. Just a wonderful time. We had the opportunity to see I saw a large cat for the first time in my hunting life, which was pretty exciting.
And did you guys have success, Pete?
Unfortunately, this year we didn't, and we hunted the same area that we hunted last year for the very first time. Tim Corley was lucky enough to bag a nice 11-pointer, and he hunts an awful lot every year, and he said it was the nicest deer he'd ever shot in the state of Vermont. And he travels all over the USA in various states, and he was pretty psyched on the deer that he got.
Yeah, we're looking at it right now, Pete. That is a really nice deer.
Oh, it was impressive, and it was an 11-pointer, and it was just the cards were in his favor and the stars aligned, and it was just a wonderful experience. So we tried to replicate that this year, and unfortunately the cards weren't in our favor this year, but it was a wonderful tradition that we've been carrying on for about 25 years. The same group of guys get together. We used to go up to Joe's Pond, but unfortunately that camp was sold out underneath us, so we shifted gears and went to the southern part of the state. And it's fun. You know, the tropics of southern Vermont are vastly underrated for deer hunting.
Is that true? The southern Vermont vastly underrated for deer hunting?
I think even amongst Vermonters, perhaps they don't realize what's very close to them. And so what's great about Vermont is it's a small state and has extremely diverse habitats. And those translate into differences for deer and deer hunters. But we routinely see antlered bucks that come out of, I believe this deer was shot in P or Q and may have made its way to a biological check station. But we routinely see deer that are in excess, antlered deer that are in excess of 5, 6 years of age, coming out of the lower Green Mountains in south and southeast Vermont. And there's some very good deer hunting to be had in those places. And those are also places that have relatively few hunters. So there's great opportunities for quality experiences to get out there. And I think there's a lot of deer like that, and it's just a matter of finding them.
One additional thing about the southern part of the state is that in certain parts of it, it can be difficult to find land, at least private land, that's not posted, that's open to hunting. And one of the things we do is try to make the case to landowners that to further the health of the deer herd and to protect their land, it's a good idea to open that land up to hunters. But that can be a challenge in some parts of the southern part of the state.
Tovar, do you find a lot of posting where you hunt?
Not really. You know, I live in Marshfield, and there's hundreds of acres of private timberland out behind us that are just unposted and open. I've asked permission, and they say, well, why are you asking permission? That's just open. And so there's actually quite a lot of open land. There's some places I hunt where there's some posting around it, but you know, by and large, I found that private timberland and of course state land, but private timberland's pretty accessible in central Vermont as far as I found.
Adam, does posted property pose a problem for the department when it comes to deer management? I know in Grand Isle County, for instance, there's a lot of posted land, but there's also a lot of deer. But does it present any challenges for you guys?
You know, I think it presents challenges for deer hunters, which can make it more difficult to achieve some of your deer management objectives. If you have places that hunters can't access and places where hunters have very good access, you can certainly not only have differences in deer numbers, but differences in the harvest and hunters' ability to harvest deer. And we want to keep Vermont's deer healthy, and deer live in a very small area. So, you know, a doe can live in 100 acres. And so if you're not able to get where the deer are, you can have pockets of too many deer. And so that really hampers our ability to maintain a healthy herd throughout the state. And that maintain a healthy herd maintains a healthy land. And so where those places are occurring, you know, I think a lot of landowners aren't aware of the negative implications of having too many deer in places. So it certainly can improve the difficulty in making sure that you're evenly distributing the harvest of deer across the landscape.
Do you see a lot of impacts on forest regeneration in some parts of the state?
So, you know, we work very closely with county foresters to monitor the status of people that are trying to maintain a working landscape. And so the input that they see on the ground is critical in helping us gauge where we are. And that's a big part of the reason we also look at how healthy individual deer are. If there's too many deer and they all have a hard time finding food, they're all going to weigh less. And in the case of bucks in particular, if you have less extra energy, then you're not going to have extra energy put into antler development. And that's one reason the department goes through a lot of effort to measure the antlers of male deer, because that's a sensitive indicator to herd health. So, you know, we work closely with the foresters, and we don't think that throughout most of Vermont that we have too many deer. And that's partly due to hunters. And so, you know, we do see places where deer are locally overabundant, and the department has created a Connecting Hunters and Landowners program to address some of those small areas. So in places where you do have locally overabundant deer populations, try to facilitate getting some responsible hunters in there to harvest some antlerless deer.
We've got a responsible hunter on the phone, and it's another youth. So Lizzie from White River Junction is joining us. Lizzie, can you hear us?
Yes.
How old are you, Lizzie?
12.
12?
Yes.
And so what's your story? Did you get the deer during rifle season or youth season?
Youth weekend.
Saturday or Sunday? And
It was Saturday, I believe.
and tell us a little bit about it.
Sunday, sorry, Sunday.
So we're looking at this big fella. Is this the first deer you ever shot?
Yes.
How did it happen? How did it go down?
We were sitting in our blind, and I just got back from a hockey tournament.
How'd you do in the hockey tournament?
We won some and lost some.
That's kind of how deer hunting goes, by the way.
Yeah.
So you get back from the hockey, and now what happens?
And so I put on my hunting gear, and we came up to the blind, and then we sat there, and we saw some pretty nice sized doe come through. And then next thing you know, about 10 minutes later, we saw this deer come through, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm pretty sure that has horns. And the deer was just walking up the hill, and then we saw it, and it lifted its head up, and it did have horns, and a guy that works with my dad, he bow hunts up behind our house, so he said he saw at least 6 points on one. So then I let it walk into my scope, and I shot it. We followed a blood trail, and we were looking around and kept looking back at the blind, and we were like, well, we know we can see it from there. And my dad kept looking and turning around, and they said, well, if you look, and then he stopped talking, and there was the deer laying up on a brush pile. And I was really, really happy, and we were both like, his eyes were just like lightened up, so we were just both really happy. And luckily it was on the edge of a property line that's really, my dad has grown up with these people, so he came down with his four-wheeler, and we field dressed him, and we went to Sharon and brought him to the weigh station, and we couldn't believe it. It was 185 pounds.
And I understand you didn't just field dress him, you field dressed him with a special knife, didn't you?
Yes, my great-grandfather last year, he died a couple days before Christmas, and it was pretty emotional and everything. So we decided, because we know he would always share hunting stories with us. So I told my dad, I said, well, you know, he would be really proud of me right now. So we need to use his rope that he gave me and the knife that he gave me. So, because you know, he would be really proud.
Well, Lizzie, we're pretty proud. So congratulations and thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Great deer, huh?
Great deer.
Great story.
Yeah, and a great story. It's clearly meant a lot to her, both the getting the deer and also the story of how it happened. It's just terrific.
You know, readers. Oh, that's the old print guy in me. Viewers have been sending in some stuff all night. OJ at vermontpbs.org, and I want to go to one that Austin Buttle sent in just about as we came on the air. And so this one, Austin says this is his last youth deer weekend. So he says, I was sitting in my spot, my dad behind me, and this big boy was just walking through like he had all the time in the world and nowhere to be. So I let him walk closer until they got about 60 or 70 yards. I had him in the sights of my little old 4-power scope. I whistled to get him to stop, and then a second later, he was shot through the top of his heart. He staggered, fell over, got up, ran a tight little circle, and dropped right there, no more than 5 yards from where he was hit. And that's a great deer, Austin. Great, and we like the snow camo as well, don't we? That's a nice one. We also have gotten a bunch of phone calls and emails about what we're doing in Vermont for deer regulations moving forward. And if you want to just briefly talk about where we are, sort of. Sure. We're taking a look at the deer hunting structure now, and
about 2 years ago or so, the department started with the Fish and Wildlife Board, which, as the viewers probably know, oversees our hunting and fishing regulations, looking at all aspects of deer regulation and deer management in Vermont. And we're coming towards the end of that process now, and looking at a number of different things in those regulations with the board and the department, of course, providing expertise and opinions on those possibilities, including looking at a possibility of allowing crossbows, possibility of increasing archery season, looking at the antler point restriction rule, and looking at maybe possibly an early muzzleloader season, use of natural-based deer lures, a whole host of things.
So just about anything that's
just about anything. There were a series of petitions from hunters to the board on various aspects. We're looking at those and other things that weren't among those petitions.
Russ emailed and he asked if he thought about moving the youth season around, maybe to mid-September, so the youth don't have to deal with cold temps and maybe get a better chance at deer before bow season. That on the table or not?
We haven't talked that much about moving the youth season. One of the things we discovered, we've had kind of a lengthy process of working with stakeholder groups and hearing from hunters as well as the board members, and youth season has stood out as something that has pretty universal or at least a very high majority of people who support it in its current form.
Like I said, the old email machine, I don't know if you can hear it dinging or not, or if it's just me, but it's been going off since we started the show. And we've got an email from Lorianne Weston, and she sent a photo in. And the first day on this photo, what we're going to see is an 8-pointer. It was 150 pounds, shot by Todd Weston. And the second day, 7-pointer, 184 pounds. So a little bit heavier, shot by Lorianne Weston, and Lori's first deer ever, and she says, happy tailgate. So there's a nice picture of a Vermont truck in November, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we invite viewers to keep sending in their stories and their photos to oj@vermontpbs.org. Tovar, have you had chance, I know 9 o'clock this morning, you shot your deer. Have you had a chance to eat it yet, or anything out of it?
No, not yet. I haven't gotten quite there yet.
What's your favorite way to eat venison?
Oh, wow. You know, often what we do, I've been pretty lucky over the years and gotten deer here in Vermont, and often we'll just slice some steak or backstrap, and in the summertime just take some salad greens from the garden, and we'll just do a saute and put it over, just like grilled chicken over salad. We often do that. I've really gotten into braising, like with shanks, rather than trying to grind up all the shank meat. I just do a real slow braise for a few hours, and that's pretty amazing.
That does sound good.
That's
that
good.
Sounds really good. We've got a phone call. We've got Mike from Waterbury who's calling in. Mike, are you there?
Yes, I am.
So, do you want to talk about your hunting, or did you get your deer yet, or?
No, I didn't. But it's kind of a great story about the importance of deer camp to Vermonters and hunters in general. This year, I go to a multi-generational deer camp up in Standard, Vermont. There are 3 generations that typically go to the camp. And opening day yesterday, the youngest person in the camp now, which is he's probably 19 or 20, so the camp is getting older. He did shoot a nice 165-pound 5-pointer on opening morning. But this is about how important deer camp is. Opening day, I was out in the woods, and my mom's been suffering from dementia for the last about 6 years. She's down in Georgia, not in Georgia, Vermont, but Georgia, the state of. And after coming out of the woods, I found out that my mom passed away. And it's kind of neat, I'm real good with the situation. Actually, she's in a better place now. But it's about the support that all the guys in deer camp have for folks. And we had a nice toast for my mom, and we had a nice toast for Michael, shooting his nice buck. And it's about, that's what deer camp's about. People think it's about drinking beer and, not good things. I think, deer camp is a really important Vermont tradition.
I would agree with you, Mike, and thanks for calling. And I know both of us have grown up in Vermont, and both have been exposed to deer camps and that tradition, and it's still very important, very much a fabric of Vermont life.
That was a great call from Mike, because it's those communities of people who get together around where they hunt, whether it's in deer camp or whether it's not. Those communities of people who get around a certain piece of land they care about, a certain piece of land they know really well, a deer herd they know really well. Maybe people who they don't see most of the year are really important to the state and really an important part of deer hunting in Vermont and the deer hunting tradition in Vermont, and something that I care a lot about.
So part of that tradition is having a healthy deer herd. And Adam, the photos we've seen, some of the videos we've seen, it looks like there's some pretty healthy deer out there. And I know you guys on opening, and you guys I mean biologists for the Fish and Wildlife Department, on opening weekend and sometimes during youth you have these biological check stations. So what's going on at these biological check stations?
Right, so every hunter that's successful needs to bring their deer to a check station, and we get some information on where they harvested that animal, if it's a male or female, an adult or juvenile. And so all hunters, by participating in that process, are what allows the department to scientifically manage the deer herd. Without the cooperation of Vermont hunters, we wouldn't be able to do that, and we wouldn't have the information to make informed decisions. So all Vermont hunters, whether they bring their deer to a regular check station or biological check station, are contributing greatly to our deer management efforts. At certain check stations, we send biologists, and the biologists are there to gather health information from individual deer, and we're also very interested in how old those animals are. If you know the average age of an animal and you know how many were harvested, you can start to figure out how many were out there. And by looking at how healthy individual deer are, we can make some broad assessments about the overall health of the population and ensure that we are continuing to keep them healthy. And we know that Vermont's deer, a yearling buck in Vermont, weighs about 4 pounds more than it did in the 1990s, and about 10 pounds more than it did in the 1960s. And healthy deer, even if there are less of them out there, healthy does, they have more fawns. Those fawns are in better physical condition and more likely to survive their first winter. And so healthy deer recruit more deer. They have more fawns, more healthy fawns, and that translates into greater hunter success. So by hunters participating in the check process and hunters going out of their way to allow us to examine their deer, puts the department in a great position to monitor deer herds throughout the state, and those data are utilized to guide future management prescriptions. So hunters are absolutely critical to our ability to manage the state's deer herd.
So Dan from Concord, New Hampshire is going to join us. I think he's got a question that sort of tags into this conversation. Dan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Did you have a question about deer health or deer herd management?
Yes, I did, but first I want to congratulate my friend Tovar Cerulli, who I've shared the hex hatch with on a north central Vermont pond. I wanted to congratulate him on being successful yet again in the Vermont woods, so congratulations, Tovar.
Thanks, Dan. Good to hear from you.
He didn't bring us any fresh venison, Dan. He stiffed us on that. But
Vermont native moved to New Hampshire the year that you guys started antler restrictions, and I've been hunting both states ever since. And what I've noticed over the last 8 or 9 years is that I regularly see more and bigger bucks in New Hampshire than I do in Vermont, even though we don't have antler restrictions and you guys do. And so that tells me that it's not just antler restrictions. There's got to be something to do with habitat. And I'm just wondering, what is the Vermont Fish and Game Department doing about the habitat problem in Vermont? Because from what I see, the reason why we're able to have more and bigger bucks in New Hampshire every year is because there's more places for them to hide, because there's a lot more early successional habitat than there seems to be in Vermont, and that may be due to more restrictions on logging or just, you know, the lack of landowner, ability or the want to manage the habitat appropriately. So I welcome, any thoughts regarding habitat you guys have and what Fish and Game is going to do about it.
Sure. First of all, I think I'd take exception a little bit to your New Hampshire deer hunting over Vermont, but that might be a longer conversation. In terms of habitat, of course, habitat's incredibly important, and it changes over the decades, and to some extent there is a lot we can do about it, and to a certain extent the natural progression of changes in the forest and the landscape and in access has a tide and a rhythm all of its own. But let me tell you what the department's doing about those issues. One of the things we do is work to make sure that there is land open to hunting, and that land is managed for deer and for other species, both private and public land, and land that our conservation partners have as well, the Nature Conservancy among others. We've started in the last few years managing state lands in conjunction with Forest Parks and Recreation, so that we have both biologists and foresters working on the management of pretty much all state land, which has been a major change and a very successful partnership for us. My department lends their biological and habitat expertise, and Forest Parks and Rec lends their forestry expertise, and it's really a great combination. We're working in the department to work towards a similar model with private landowners and with private foresters, in which our contributions and understanding of those issues can help them as well. We've also changed the current use system in Vermont, so that ecologically significant areas can be enrolled in current use even if they're not in active production, as in some cases they are better off not, deer yards among them. And so those are some of the efforts we've undertaken and are continuing to take.
Just got an email, said deer habitat, cut more trees, period. We also got an email from Wendy Livingston, and thanks very much for that phone call. We got an email from Wendy Livingston, who actually shot this deer. It's her first deer with a bow. It's an 8-pointer, 171 pounds in Bristol, and that was during bow season. So there's a nice deer there. We were talking before the phone call, before the photo from Wendy, about biology and these biological check stations. And the OJ crew, actually on opening day of rifle season, went to a biological check station up in Jericho. And I think we're going to look at some of that video right now.
Got up at 4, really early. We drove down to North Randolph. I walked across the corn piece, jumped 3 deer almost immediately, started tracking one of them, and just before 9 I had one doe come down, and about a minute and a half later I saw a second doe come down, and then within 30 seconds this guy was right on her heels, and about 60 yards away, touched it off. And this is my 3rd buck. I don't know, I've only shot a couple of does, so I've been hunting since I was 13 and I'm 40 years old. So good memories.
I'm 65 years old and I've been hunting since I was 8, and I've taken my share of deer. I wouldn't be able to tell you how many there are. There's been a lot of them. Just kind of lost track of it, but the whole family eats venison. We love it, and we just love the sport.
Yeah, we woke up at 4 o'clock this morning. We got into Jericho probably around 5 o'clock. Started walking at 5:30. This guy came in just at dusk, right at 7 o'clock, maybe 6:45, first thing in the morning. Came right into me, hid behind a tree for about 5 minutes. Lost sight of him for 5 minutes, and then I heard him again, and he showed me broadside, and that's when we took the shot and put a good one on it. Simple as that. It was fast and easy and early, but it did take us 4 hours to get it down. We were pretty high up.
I was sitting down in my spot, and 2 doe ran up on me, and I was about ready to take a picture of them with my phone, and then out comes the buck, so I grabbed the rifle real quick and shot it before he ran with the doe over the ridge. First deer is an 8-pointer with 178 pounds.
Probably a good idea that he put down his phone and picked up his rifle there, huh? Although it would have been a great photo.
I was just thinking 4-hour drag, it wasn't that easy.
We have a caller on the line. We have Rob from West Rutland. Rob, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And so you have a story I think you want to share with the panel and share with us all here tonight?
Yeah, we had a very successful opening day of Youth Weekend. Both my nephew Will and my youngest daughter Isabel were fortunate enough to take bucks.
So both these were in West Rutland?
No, we were actually hunting down near Ludlow.
So tell me how it went. Were you in the ground blind, tree blind? Were you still hunting? How did it happen?
Will was on the ground with my brother Dan, and Isabel and I were in a tree stand, and we were close enough, maybe 3/4 of a mile apart, that we could hear the shot when Will got his deer. And it was kind of a challenge to keep Isabel in the tree long enough. She wanted to go see her cousin's deer. About 7:30, she saw a deer coming towards us, and a short time later, she got hers.
And I've had two sons who were successful during youth weekend. You want to talk about the excitement or the adrenaline rush that goes through you when it all is connected there? And I know you didn't pull the trigger, and you didn't have any, much to do with it other than you sat there with your daughter. But just talk about that sort of rush that comes.
If you're a hunter and you haven't had the chance to sit next to a child and whisper in their ear while a deer's coming, you're really missing out on something. This is my third daughter and our last youth hunt, and it's been pretty special.
Oh, that's great. Rob, thanks very much for calling in. That's a great story and great photo. And we've got lots of great photos. We don't have any time to get most of them up, but for our viewers out there, if you go to vermontpbs.org, we will have some stories, some photos, all the stuff that's coming in tonight that people want to share their experience in the woods will be out there. Have any of you guys had a chance to go on a youth hunt?
I have not.
No?
Not yet. I have a neighbor who maybe.
I'm always working.
Can you do something? Well, actually, Adam makes a good point, which is a lot of the people in the department, most of them, in fact, hunt, and a lot of them give up time of their deer season to work biological check stations, or if they're wardens, of course, that's the busiest time of year, so they give up a lot of that time to work for other people for their hunts.
Did you grow up hunting with your dad?
Yeah, my dad and mostly my brother. My brother's actually, if being commissioner was based purely on deer hunting success, my brother would be commissioner, not me.
Yeah, same thing about being an outdoor writer, which I used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Did you grow up deer hunting with your dad?
Oh, absolutely. My youngest memories are sitting in a tree stand with my dad. So, yeah, growing up, deer hunting was an integral part of our family, and deer camp, and that tradition is something that's very strong in my family.
And having a mentor, is so critical for kids, but also for adults.
Did you have a mentor?
I did. I have one uncle who hunts in my family. My mother's brother. He lives down in Massachusetts, and he was critical for me to figure out what I was doing. I had all kinds of questions. Some of them, philosophical, but many of them practical. And even though we couldn't see each other very often or hunt together much, just emails. I must have sent him 1,000 emails with questions about the most basic things, because if you don't grow up with it, you just don't know.
Right.
And having that mentor is really helpful, even for adults.
We have a kid who got a mentor and a deer. This is from Joshua Getz, and the photo is, he says, my son Gabriel got his first deer Sunday at 10 a.m. on youth weekend. This is a 118-pound spike horn. We're going to talk about deer weights in a second. We picked the meat up this evening and, of course, had venison tonight. The other picture is of my 2 years ago, I don't know if we have that photo or not, a 167-pound 12-pointer that I got. So, Adam, you've done some of your grad work down south. You grew up in the Midwest. You come to Vermont, and people talk about the pounds that their deer weighs.
Yeah.
And we don't see that. There it is. There's the other one. It's a nice deer. We talk about weights. Not a lot of other people do. What's up with that?
Yeah, I must say I was a little taken back by the degree that hunters care about how much their deer weighs. But I think as I've talked to Vermont hunters, I think it's important and a good thing that they are interested in that. When we talk about keeping Vermont's deer healthy, if we say a yearling weighs 150 15 pounds, that doesn't mean anything to hunters if they don't have something to reference that to. So I think by having hunters weigh their deer, that really puts them in a position to understand why the department is making the decisions that it is, and can relate to those numbers. So I think it's important, and I think it's good that hunters are interested in those types of things. You know, I think perhaps that is maybe emphasized too much, but it certainly is a good thing, I think, overall.
Good, Bob. We've got time for your phone call. We've got about a minute and a half left. Bob from Burlington is calling. Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And do you have a comment or a question or a story for the panel?
Yeah.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. There's a delay between what I'm hearing on the phone and the TV. What I wanted to call in about is I've been hunting for about 52 years now, and I've had 3 deer in my lifetime, but it's about 37 years since I got a deer, and I just want to say I'm not about to give up, but I'm sitting here watching all these beautiful buck and pictures and saying, hey, somebody needs to call in that's been for a few years without one.
Well, we've got a couple guys here that have been through a few years without them. And you know what? I can't believe this, but an hour of our time has already gone by. Bob, thanks very much for the call. And I wish that the 3 of us could sit around a camp stove and we'd be the 2 schmucks getting up in the morning.
Exactly. These guys wouldn't make us look good.
Yeah, they'd be sleeping in and we'd be getting up to go. But I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. I want to thank the viewers. I want to remind you to come to vermontpbs.org and check out some of these great photos that Bob referenced and that we really had fun with. So thanks very much and have a good night. And good luck out there.